First thing that I want to do is, like I always start every meeting off with the problem that we're facing with our opioid situation. And in the month of February, we had 6 deaths, 4 suicides, and 90 OD calls. We have talked with the mayor, and I've talked with the Conservation Board, and they were going to give us some money so that we can have billboards put up to try to get a little bit of awareness. My company, if I want to try to get companies to help also to match this and to try to get a little bit of awareness on this. So I'm just trying to let you know we need as much help as we can get. And we still got a long ways to go. And these calls, we had 2 less deaths this month, I'm sorry. But gentlemen, it's not getting better. So
It's a $5,000 grant.
yes, we got a grant from Conservation Board for $5,000. And then we got a couple of private companies are going to give $1,000, and the people that are putting up the billboards have decided to match it. So that's going to give us, a pretty good start anyway. Let's get on with the agenda. We got a full agenda, gentlemen, so I apologize, but it just came that way, so hope y'all will be patient, and I hope we have some good discussion. First thing I want to do is approve minutes from last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll bring to the attention of gentlemen, there is a copy of the minutes on your iPad if you need to look at it, but I have read through this, and I would like to make the motion that we approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's move on. I'd like to announce 5 vacancies on the Board of Equalization and 1 alternate vacancy. Next, we need to appoint Judicial Commissioner Maria Krieger. Do we have a motion?
Second. I'll make a motion.
Motion, Commissioner Cush, and second, Commissioner Irvin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the next thing on our agenda is the budget presentation from Human Resources, Ms. Stevenson. Gentlemen, this is, I'm going to let the mayor also talk on this. This is for us to review. This is not necessarily a motion, but it's for us to talk about, and then the mayor will bring up a budget and we'll be talking. Mayor, actually, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, members. What I'm trying to do this year is a little bit different. I'm tasking everyone on the committee you're assigned to. Let's go through on a line-by-line item. I'm not making my recommendation at this point. Just take it under advisement at this point. I'll come back, make a recommendation, my recommendation from the mayor's office, and then we'll get back into, instead of just making a motion and sending it on the budget, instead of putting that heavy burden on the budget committee, I'm tasking every department or every, subcommittee to actually work with the budget. And so I think everybody seems to be accepting that very well, that we're not deciding anything tonight. Okay, just take it under advisement, ask questions. That way it'll give you more time to ask more questions and we start formulating. By the time we get to the 1st or 2nd week of April, we should have our state shared revenue numbers in, and then we can start plugging in dollars at that point in time to help us formulate our budget going forward.
So what you have in front of you, I gave each of you a packet before the meeting started, and the top page is a highlight of the items other than salaries, okay? And so what this does is it's just a trend to show my trend lines, not since I've been here, but for the last few years, to just kind of show you how I've managed the money and how I've spent it so that you would know that I'm not asking for something that I didn't need. In this year's budget, there's a need and a wish column because we are told when coming to the mayor to bring the things that we absolutely need to perform our duties, and the other is our wish list. Normally, I don't have a wish list because I just have my needs, but this year I have one item on my wish list, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The major difference on this, if you look at there's 3 right columns. One says budget versus need, budget versus wish, and then the current year notes. The biggest difference that we have is that the $39,000 difference, and that's in our evaluation and testing. So I'm going to use a phrase that I hear of this body on a regular basis. It's called unfunded mandates. And so there have been some things that have come across for our corrections. So for our correctional work center, our juvenile detention center, and of course our jail is covered under Dr. Rudd's agreement. But there's certain physicals that they have to have. Used to, we would do a physical upon hire. We would do TB testing. We do Hep B, all those things that to make sure, one, that they're not bringing something into our facility, but then two, to make sure that, they've not been exposed to something and then they will bring it in. In the past, we would do that, and then they would have, every 5 years, they would get retested. And so we would keep a grid of like when people were hired and when they're 5 years and it was time to do it again for just their Hep B and TB. We did not do the physicals again because our employees have with the insurance through the county and they would do their HRA, so there was no point to repeat that process. However, now they come and audit these departments and I have to be able, they come to my department and I have to be able to provide proof that they are getting, it's now required this year, annual physicals, the TB and the Hep B every year. And so what I have to do now is do a titer, and so those are expensive to do the titers, and then if they test positive, then they have to have a chest x-ray to prove whether or not they are. We have been blessed, we've not had anybody that's tested positive, but there have been several people after the complete process, but there have been some that tested positive before. And so some of it's just hereditary, what they were born with or that they carried, but they're not like going to make anybody sick. The other thing is there's a new...
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you.
I'm sorry?
So 39,460, is this based on a certain number of employees that you're talking about?
It's an estimate based on trends. So it's covering the employees that we currently have and then any that I anticipate we'll have with turnover. And so that's an added expense. The total line item you will see is the 89,460. And so that covers everything. So our new hires, when they come in, they, depending on what roles, they get different testing. And, like our corrections individuals will get their psychological examinations before they can work in corrections. We've got, our firefighters have to have special physicals. And that's where the rest of the increase came from. This past year in legislation, July 1st of 2019, the state approved some legislation for cancer screening for our firefighters, our full-time active firefighters. And what this does is they have shown that they're, through continuous exposure, they may be exposed to carcinogens that could cause cancer, and they want to make sure that we have a baseline so that we know at what point it happened. Did they come in with it? Did they not? The thing is the legislation says that they can do the testing, they can opt in or they can opt out. And so I've been going around and meeting with all the fire departments on each shift, and I have two more that I have to go to. Rain and Rex took me out of the last ones, but I've gone to all three shifts in all three departments and met with the groups and explained the process. And so right now they're determining whether they want to participate. So what this does on the participation, if they opt in and they get an annual firefighter physical, which currently is like $250, and then all of their other testing for the pre-cancer screening on top of that. It creates a baseline, and then if they say that they do not want to participate, it comes under the presumption rule that they couldn't say that it was necessarily caused because of being a firefighter with the county. And so really it's creating a baseline for the county so that we know exactly, and that's not the only reason, but there's other factors. It's really long and detailed. But that's where the testing's coming in, is from those two things. The new changes in the corrections and the new changes in firefighters. And it's an estimate. If I don't use it, it'll be turned back over. I won't be moving it somewhere else. This past year, you may remember, in the past I'd had to come back one other time and ask for more money in the testing line because we were running out. And I continually look for ways to save money. And so we had purchased the equipment last year in my budget to do the testing in-house for everything except for the CDLs. And that has saved us. That's why we haven't had to come back for money this year. It's saved us quite a bit of money. We went from paying $40 for a drug screen, and it's like $5.50 now. So we still send them off, and the MRO still reviews them. And so it's just a more cost-effective measure for us. The other item the other big item that's on here is in the supplies, 2 new monitors and 5 headsets. The 5 headsets are so that our employees can walk around. They're commonly in the file room. One file room's on one side of the building, the other's on the other, trying to answer phones and help people. The headsets would help them so that we could be mobile. I don't know that all 5 of the employees will want one, but I know that the 2 girls that primarily answer, or the 2 ladies that primarily answer the phone in my office, it would be very helpful to them. And then also to myself, I'm on the phone all the time. When I'm trying to type and listen to whatever somebody's telling me at the same time, it's not uncommon for me. I have to be on a speaker, and so it would just be better for me to be able to have a headset just to listen. I don't know any other way to say it. So I'm asking for that and 2 extra monitors. Our monitors are going down on 2 of the employees. Each of us have 2 computer monitors to do our work, and 2 of the ladies have 1 monitor going down a piece. So that's what that line item is, the $1,900 extra. And then the $4,000 extra is an estimate for a new copier. The copiers that we have in our office, I laugh because one of them, I needed a new copy. When I started with the county, I had a desktop copy scanner. I don't know how they did it with this much volume. So I asked IT to search for one, and Ricoh had one that they let me purchase for a penny, so I paid for that out of my pocket, that penny to get us the copy machine. So the one that I've been using all these years. Then when Recovery Court needed a car, HR had a car, and I rarely used it. I usually drove my own car, but they needed that car to go out and to make visits, home visits and stuff like that. So I traded, at that time Trey King was getting a new copier at their new building, and so I traded my car for a copier. So my other car was traded, and it's about 15 years old. And then the copier that I have now, it was at Circuit Court. She got new copiers, and I saw it in the hallway, and I said, it was newer than the one I had, and I said, can I have that copier? Well, it's not working well, so I'm to the point that I may need to, 12 years later, buy a copy machine. So that's what that's for. Lisa thinks I can get it for 25 to 32. I've looked at it based on the copies and all that, but I just wanted to make sure. So those are primarily the things that are not salary related. If you flip to the next page is really just a recap of what you looked at. The top part is salaries. Those are all done based on steps, so there's nothing new there. It's just the basic step increase in those numbers, and if that would be the differences there. The only thing I did ask for was to give my part-time girl a 50-cent pay increase per hour. If you flip to the next page, you'll see that it says WISH budget. So on this WISH budget, it has come to the time where, as bad as I hate to ask, I need an assistant in my absence who can make the decisions and who can take some of the calls and take some of the higher level work that I do so that I can do some of the things that I need to move our department forward. I need to be able to do some strategic planning. I need to be able to be responsive in a quicker time. For the things that I personally do, I can't get it out any quicker. As hard as I try, I cannot get it out any quicker. Some of the things that I would like to do is to be able to do some more training, improve employee relations, look for grant money for projects for our department to move us forward, to do work with the internships through the universities. We used to be very active in that, but time just got to where I couldn't do it as much. I want to make our office become paperless. That is one of the big goals that I have, is to become paperless so that everything is at our fingertips if we need it. Also to add our modules. We used to develop in-house all of our training modules online with the quizzes so that departments, if they had a need, if they called us with something they needed training, I'll just use the county clerk's office. She's asked us several times to do training for her people. Well, her people can't shut down. We can't shut down the line to get car tags so that we can train them on how to do, customer service or, dealing with, difficult behaviors or those type things. And so we would have to create things for her that they could take in between customers, that would be short snippets. So I'd like to be able to do some more of that, the strategic planning, software research to
So,
help.
excuse me.
I'm sorry.
So this salary that you're wanting, and explain to me, I guess I'm gonna say GL account 103, second item, last page. Transfer Rebecca to generalist, is that what you're talking about?
So that one would be, there's an employee in another department who does a lot of the HR aspects. So if the assistant moved in, that would create a generalist vacancy. Currently, my generalist would move up to the assistant director. Because it takes years for me to train. It takes 2 to 3, 4 years, especially for the higher level stuff, to train. And I've been working with Lindsay already to get her developed so that she could help me, because quite frankly, I couldn't do it all. And so she would move into the assistant director role, but then there's somebody in another department who has done a lot of the HR function and does a really good job as far as meticulous, getting their records to us on time, it being accurate and complete, and that would be if they backfilled that position. They're already trained on our NeoGov, on FMLA, those type things, so that puts us a step ahead instead of taking 2 to 3 years to train somebody that is not already aware. So.
Okay, carry on.
So there was just some reasons why I was trying to justify. There's another packet that you have, and it's called the HR Snapshot. And this just gives you an idea of what we did in 2019. Let me see what I put here. Where's your snapshot? Okay, so you got the primary categories, and I put, after I sit down with the mayor with this, and Steve and the mayor and Lisa ask some questions, I put kind of a legend down here at the bottom to tell you what it is. But these are the processes that we have done this year with our office, just to give you an idea of all the many functions that we do. Where you talk about the filing and scanning, we filed and scanned 44,675 documents last year alone. Then when we talk about the reports and surveys, in the the open records request, I had 883 open records requests, and currently I do those all myself because they have to be redacted. We have to make sure that nothing's going out that's not supposed to, and so that would be a help. The Open Records Council has said that if I had somebody to assist me, that they could help with that workload, and I would look at the higher level stuff. Our FMLAs, we had 1,103 FMLAs last year, processes. Whether they were leaving, coming back, a fit for duty, an ADA interactive after that. Employee recognition, where it says events, it says just 2 events, but those 2 events was a lot of planning. The employee recognition is the milestone where if somebody gets a milestone anniversary, 5, 10, 15, 20, or they retire. When I came, we weren't doing anything for them, and I wanted to make sure that they were recognized for their time and efforts. So I found sponsors to sponsor that, so the only thing that the taxpayers was coming from the taxpayers was the actual award itself. So the dinner, and I think we do a really nice job with that, with like no money. So this year we had 456 people that could have come to that event. Only 185 ended up coming, but the fact is, whether or not they came, I had to plan for 456. So this just kind of gives you an idea. Sometimes where it just says, ADA, you say there's only 38, but that 38, that's me going out and having meetings with people, sitting down, going over the interactive process to make sure that we're meeting their needs. It may be something like a light bulb that's causing them to have migraines, or, until I get out there, I don't really know. The other part of the ADA is interpreters for our hearing impaired for courts. So those are included in that. If you get into and I'm not going to go over all this, you can read it. If anybody has questions, you can call me or ask me. I'll be happy to talk to you. But the one, the interpreters for court, because I'm the ADA and Title VI coordinator, I have to get all the interpreters for languages for court. And last year, let me see which page it was under. Oh, it's under Title VI, that makes sense. Last year, I had to get 994 interpreters for court. So for all of our courts, and we had languages, all different languages, Arabic, Bengali, Burmese, Bulgarian, Chinese, Chu, Egyptian, Farsi, Filipino, French, German, Greek, Haitian, Hindi, Korean, Kekchi, Kenya, Mer, Korean, Kurdish, Laotian, Mandarin, Nepali, Nigerian, Persian, Punjabi, Kish.
I think we get it.
Okay. A bunch. It was like a bunch of them. And so I'm asking for help. I think we have managed, I think we are very productive with what we have and what we do. We try to make sure that we're as efficient, but I think that there are some things that I want to make sure that I'm not missing something. I'm so afraid that I'm going to miss turning in something that's going to cost the county money or a fine or lose a service, and I just need some help.
So you're looking at $204,229 additional to the budget of last year? Am I correct on that? Am I reading it wrong?
Now, that's current year versus actual. That's how much money, that's how much I've spent this year. Out of my 453, I've spent 204. That's what that is. So the difference in it would be, I didn't calculate that. Let's see. Sorry, I should have had that for you. It's about $158,000 total for the, that includes everything I've asked for though, not just salaries. So
Okay. Is that it?
that's it.
Is there any questions, commissioners? I know I have, I'm going to look over this a little bit more. I like to study budgets a whole lot
Okay.
more than just 10 minutes. If any of y'all have any questions, if y'all want to get with me or your commissioners, go directly to her. But next meeting, we'll be talking, so Mayor, when are you bringing your budget?
After we finish, it all depends on everybody's calendar, each department head. We've already done sheriff's department, ambulance. Some of the big ones are already done, and of course, we kind of sit back and wait on the school board because it just dwarfs whatever we do in general services.
Wendy, do you foresee when you're going to give the human resource budget that she just went over?
I think I'd have to come back in April because you have to have it for budget for May.
Yeah.
So I would have to come back next
I'll
month.
have it sometime next month.
Okay, I'll put you on the agenda next month. Okay. Please stay, Sonia. I'm going to move this, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question for
Go
Sonia.
ahead.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand how many players you have in your office. So you're at the head of the stream, and then how many people do you have under you?
I have a generalist who is full-time.
Okay.
I have a specialist. I have an HR assistant, which does like payables and stuff like that. And those three are full-time. And then I have a part-time lady who does nothing but scan and file 20-something hours a week. That's all she does.
20 hours, okay.
It's like 20, 24, depends on the week.
Right. So you, 2 fulls, and then a half. Okay.
No, sir. Me, 3 fulls and a half. A
General
generalist, a specialist
specialist.
assistant, and then a part-time clerk.
A generalist. One generalist.
One specialist, one assistant.
One
which is like my
assistant.
admin.
Okay, an assistant. And then the part-time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, we'll move on. Stay seated. So I want to skip down, since she's already at the table, I want to skip down to number 8 on the agenda, the employee handbook policy on carrying guns.
Let me get that.
The reason I'm give y'all a little update on what this is, Public Safety had a committee meeting in which Commissioner Rather asked that the signs be taken down for the courthouse. It says no guns, and that was voted on, and that was done. But some questions that came up concerning employees carrying weapons in county buildings. So Sonia would like to talk on that, and then I'd like to get discussion on this. It's going to be a subject that people are really interested in, so we need to kind of listen to this and get an idea of what we want to do here. Sonia, go ahead.
So I gave you out at the beginning of the meeting the weapons at work policy. So what we did after that last meeting, trying to make sure that I understood exactly what you were asking for and needed some additional guidance as well. And that was from public, what meeting was that we talked about this? Public safety, okay. We contacted the larger municipalities and larger counties just to see what policies they had in place already. So this is a list of who we contacted, who we spoke to, did they have a policy, did they not? And currently, based on what we read, I'm not seeing any of the other counties or cities that are currently allowing their employees. It's more called like a weapon than it is a handgun. And so they're going under the weapons policy. But it talks about allowing them to leave them in their parked cars. Chattanooga says they allow them to bring them with them, but to leave them in the parked cars. And they cited TCA 3917, 1313. Hamilton County had a zero tolerance. City of Clarksville talked about doing their workplace violence. They put that under the workplace violence. Montgomery does not allow. City of Memphis does not allow unless it's part of their job. Shelby allows in parked cars. Metro is prohibited and said all of their elected officials in Metro have adopted the same policy. And we tried to get, somebody suggested, I think it may have been Commissioner Gammon suggested that we reach out to the Post. And we reached out to Post, which is where they get certified, the patrol officers to be certified. And they did not wish to provide any guidance or give us any direction whatsoever in that on how we should move forward. The next page behind it is our current policy. We don't have a lot about this. The only thing we have, and it's really on the back page, if you go down about, I don't know, 7 or 8 bullet points, it just says possession of unauthorized firearms or lethal weapons on county property is a problem. So currently it says unauthorized. So authorized, I guess, would be deemed upon, our patrol officers are authorized. Chief Farley is authorized. So I guess if this body decided to authorize people, then that would be authorized. That would be the other part. I know that Nick probably has some points and thoughts on this as well. He researched it quite a bit. And I don't know if you want to, I'm just needing guidance on what you would want Nick and I to do as we move forward with this.
Our handbook, currently under code, correct me, Commissioner, but county commissioners can currently carry.
So that would be authorized.
That's authorized, but that's not in our handbook.
But they're not employees, so they wouldn't, it would be under their handbook. Would they be?
Are they employed or not?
Well, they're elected. It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
You're paying them.
They don't, we'll put it this way, we can't terminate them. So that's how I look at it. So, I don't know.
Together, you can.
I don't know how else to say that. I don't, because we don't have any authority over the commissioners, just like any other elected officials. We don't have any authority over an elected official, so that would be at their discretion.
How many employees are we talking about
That work for the county?
that'll affect? I know this has nothing to do with school, so how many are we looking
About
at?
1,700.
17.
There's about 1,400 full-time and about another 300-400 part-time that varies, fluctuates.
Okay, here's what I think, and then sure the wagons will start coming. One of the things that I'm concerned with, and it's going to be really kind of at you, Sonia, because a lot of times you deal with very bad situations. You deal with firing people, you deal with disciplining people, you deal with investigations. And so my question to you is, one of the things that I'm concerned with is safety of department heads. So I don't know if I feel comfortable with someone carrying a gun into a meeting where he's getting ready to be fired. So,
Me
I'll be listening to the, yeah, I mean, actually, I am kind of putting you on the spot because, you're the one that's in that situation, not me or not any of these other commissioners.
I think, though, the way the rules are wrong, Nick, don't let me hang in here. I think the way the rules are written, though, unless the building has metal detectors or armed or guards or,
Three things.
right, there's 3 things they have to have, then we can't tell them no, really, right?
Well, there is specific state law that allows the county as an employer to prohibit an employee from carrying a weapon. And I think that still withstands scrutiny, notwithstanding that they have a authorized handgun carry permit. So there's a whole section of the law that deals with the ability of the county to restrict the public from carrying firearms on county property or in county buildings. But there's a separate statute that says that despite that, the county can still restrict its staff from carrying a firearm, whether it's a handgun or not. Now, whether the county wants to do that is a policy decision for you all, and I think that there are, HR has input, and I think that you probably also want to hear from your insurance department, because there might be implications from an underwriting perspective that if we have a written policy that expressly allows staff to carry a firearm while they are working within the scope of their employment, that an insurance underwriter may have issues with that and/or increase premiums or attach some sort of rider to your insurance policy.
And in the sheriff's office also, I spoke with Sheriff Fitchie and I said, what would this mean to you? And obviously, if we went this route, we would have to put in some kind of mechanism to know, like the sheriff would need to know he was carrying, because if, I will tell you, I've had to call, the judicial building, thank goodness, is really close to my office. And so there have been times where there have been situations in my office and the ladies outside have heard and have called, which I'm thankful that they've had, because they've actually had to come into my office because people, and it's not always employees, it's citizens that sometimes come in there that are not.
See, that's where I'm confused. Governor Lee just said that he wants to be able to have a handgun without any permit. All right? I mean, he wants that to be a law, and it's got a good chance of doing it. So if it's the law with the state, they should be able to carry it anywhere they want.
Yeah, so I read that in the news last week, and assuming that bill becomes law, which I'm pretty confident it probably will, that's going to get rid of the distinction between a concealed handgun carry permit and Mr. Rather, you probably know some of the names better than I, but it's going to get away with that distinction, and instead you don't have to have a permit to carry a handgun. I mean, if you go and buy a handgun, you pass a background check, you can probably carry your handgun, notwithstanding you don't have a permit, probably won't even have a permitting process. Despite that, there is a separate state law that's currently on the books that gives the authority to you as the county to restrict your employees or your independent contractors from carrying. It is a reasonable basis with which you can restrict their ability to do that, okay? Now, whether you want to do that, that's up to you, and whether you want to make it an express to say that they can carry, or if you want to put some sort of reasonable regulations around the parameters upon which can obtain the ability to carry, that's something that we can consider and talk about. Now, remember that there are certain staff and officials that already have, as an essential function of their job, the ability to carry a firearm. I mean, all of your law enforcement, as an essential function to protect the public, have to carry a firearm. So this restriction, as it's currently written in the handbook, doesn't apply to those essential function personnel. if you're going to open that up and allow others, even if, like, for example, a county clerk or a deputy clerk or somebody that works over in the courthouse that files stuff in court jackets to be able to carry a handgun while they're at work, that's your policy decision to make. Whether you want to put additional restrictions that say, well, in order to do that, you have to pass this test, you have to have a psychological evaluation by human resources, you have to pass a background check, you have to be fingerprinted, the sheriff's office has to know you got a gun. All that stuff we can talk about and vet if the steering committee wants to move in that direction. There are liability issues, with this, allowing that to happen, but I've heard that the argument can cut both ways. What if we don't allow employees to carry guns and somebody comes in there
Probably does.
and uses a gun on them? To that, I would say that argument is a bit too attenuated to suggest that by the county not having a policy that allows one to carry guns was the but-for causation to their injury because the public came in and used a gun. It's probably not a great argument for someone to make. Someone probably has a better argument from a legal perspective. Again, I don't know all the facts, and we probably would have defenses, but a better argument may be that the county consciously allowed an employee to carry a gun and say that employee turned out to not be mentally fit and came and used that gun or negligently discharged the firearm on accident and it ricochets and hits somebody in the head, then you probably will have allegations at least, or naming us in a lawsuit that we were negligent.
And right now, there's two different types of permits. One, there's a concealed weapon permit, and the law on that is a 90-minute. It's a 90-minute audio, video, webinar type thing that they can get. They send in their information. They have to go get their fingerprints. The one thing that nobody's been able to tell me is how they meet the psychological piece of this. Because if you do the concealed carry, they're going to know through your fingerprints whether you have a felony, whether you've ever, those type things. But there's a lot in the Tennessee Code. I read every bit of it, and it's a lot with the psychological piece of it. And nobody's been able to tell me how because it's a questionnaire. They're asking somebody, well, somebody who really wants a gun may or may not be truthful with that. So the other one is the enhanced handgun carry permit. And the enhanced handgun carry permit is the one that it talked about predominantly that they were allowing to use. The other thing is, looking at the state, you cannot get in a state office building anywhere that you don't have to go through a guard. They make you go through the whole thing. I went to that, I've been to lots of them up there, and I've yet to be in a state building at all that there's not some guard that you're having to go through. So, I don't know that the county really wants to. I don't know that we're ready for having a guard in every building and locking down the building so nobody can get past. You have to stop at this desk before you go forward. I don't know that takes away kind of the hometown feel a little bit. But as we grow, that may be something you look at. With the handgun carry permit, they actually have to go to a class where there's an instructor, and it's a more detailed. Anybody who had their handgun carry permit before this was put in place was automatically moved over to the enhanced carry permit. It's just anybody new coming in is the concealed. So that's where, I came up with, after talking with the sheriff, saying they would need to know before they entered a building what they're walking into. Obviously, that if they had information, they would know. So then that made me think, well, do they have to tell us that they are carrying a handgun? If so, can we put restrictions? And that's where the psychological examination comes in. We have to do that for our law enforcement. They have to have a psychological before we put a gun in their hand. And so would that be something that we would do? Anybody who wanted to do that, they would have to have the psychological, but the employee would have to pay for that. That would be their price for being able to. So I don't know. There's just so many things to consider.
It's getting very touchy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think.
Can I add something real quick, just to make sure that all the commissioners are clear? What the county cannot do is restrict the ability of an employee to carry their firearm in their car. There's a trunk storage statute that specifically says that if it's on public property, and there's specifics on whether it has to be in the box or the glove box or can be out in the open, but the bottom line is an employee can carry their gun in their car, as long as it's not a county vehicle that they use in their everyday essential job functions. Like, for example, you have an RCSO deputy's vehicle. He has guns in his vehicle because it's an essential function of his job or her job to carry a firearm to protect the public.
Nick, I think what you're relating there to is this Tennessee code annotated law about can be allowed in the car. And I think that's what Chattanooga,
They specifically reference that.
that's what reference to their employees. When we're talking about employees, it's basically what any business has anywhere, I think, within the state of Tennessee. I know when I worked over in Columbia, that's what we were under there, is that employees did not carry in the building. But basically, we could have them out in the car. That was the problem there. So it was just basically related to the employees, and I think that's what you're relating here. That's what's in our book here. Now, other night in public safety here, public safety did not vote on anything. Because of the fact, I think Commissioner Rather, and he'll tell you this, it had already been discussed in 2017.
Right.
And it had already been discussed and been agreed upon that all the signs within our buildings would be taken down as far as this was related to. The only thing is that in the courthouse, they had failed to be taken down. And most of them had dry rotted and had fallen off the doors, and window washing and this sort of thing. I think we had, one sign that had remained, I think is what we had. So the only thing we said there is that to meet the law, the state law, is that sign would be removed. And that's what public safety did. And then all of this come up, well, what about our employees? And that's where we are tonight and where that comes from. So I think you go back to your insurance, you go back to what you want to do there. But I think we treat our employees as an employee if we treat it anywhere else. Commissioner Rather, I think.
Commissioner, or Chairman Harris said this is a very touchy subject, and it is because the handgun carry permit folks that I know, and there's a lot more than I ever would imagine. I've seen 70-year-old ladies with a handgun carry permit, and they carry a gun. They're law-abiding patriots, is what I would call them. And they take that permit very seriously and do the best they can not to lose that permit, because you do go through the class, you do get fingerprinted, you don't take a psych exam, not when I went through it. But the reality is this: heroin is illegal, and it's an epidemic, right? But it's illegal. So you can make guns illegal in a county building, even with employees. And guess what? They may bring a gun, you never know it. They don't show it, and they never will show it unless they're out to defend themselves or somebody else. You take an employee in the Milwaukee, was it in Milwaukee or Milwaukee Brewery? That got fired. He went home, got a gun, came back and shot, what, did he kill 5 people? Now, so I see both sides of it, and quite honestly, I haven't decided whether I'm for or against having guns by employees. But my problem is, an employee, anybody has a right to defend themselves. Let me just put it that way.
I agree with that.
And they have a right. The reality, everybody knows the reality of this world we live in. You don't know if you're walking from one building to the parking garage or wherever, that you're not going to get mugged or shot or abducted or whatever. Odds are it's not going to happen, but it happens all the time. And to take away someone's right to defend themselves, if you carry a gun, have a handgun carry permit, it's not only the use of deadly force is not just for yourself, it says for other people too. I can use deadly force if there's an imminent fear of death or serious bodily injury to yourself or someone else. So even defending another person, from getting beat up or robbed and at gunpoint, a handgun carry permit holder, just like law enforcement, they can shoot that guy and it's justifiable homicide. It's a good shoot. So, the reason I say all that is, I just hate to take away anybody's right, which we have, to defend ourselves or someone else. Now, there's a lot of liability with that too. I get that, but you can sue the vote for being Catholic. That doesn't mean you're going to win it. So I just want to make that statement. The reality is, if somebody wants to cause harm, regardless of what a state code or handbook says, they're going to cause harm.
And I agree with you. My families are all gun permitted carriers themselves, but I guess some of the people that come into the office, and they could not be a gun permit. They could buy one off the street just as easily.
Yeah.
So I just, looking for guidance on what we need to do, ask Ed what the insurance liability, and this came into play because of saying that the public could bring weapons in to the building, which they already can. And so that's where it came across about the employees, and it's funny that you said one of our older employees came to me. I talked about this when Mayor Burgess was in office. A couple of employees approached me about it several years ago. Talked to Mayor Ketchum about it, we've talked recently about it as well, trying to figure out what's the best solution. And then when this body came about, that's where we're at. So really it's just guidance on what you guys think.
Is it feasible to ask an employee, if we do let them have the right to carry a firearm, is it legal for us to ask or request so that we know who's bringing a gun in?
So I think state law allows you to regulate this area of your employee. The list of the types of regulations that you can place on the ability of an employee to carry a firearm, they're not listed in the statute. So we're kind of just have to come up with some sort of list. I would think it's a reasonable request as a condition for employment that if one wants to carry a firearm while acting within the scope of their employment, that they give up the right to not be identified to its employer that they have a handgun. Or some other, I assume that's what we're talking about here, a handgun. And also a stipulation that they would sign that the sheriff's office would know that that individual has a handgun. If right now, if you do nothing, then everything stays the way it is. The handbook doesn't allow an employee to carry a handgun, and state law says that we can't restrict their ability to keep it in their car. So there's really, if the committee doesn't want to do anything, everything just kind of stays the same. If the committee wants to do something different and forward it on to the commission, it's going to require an affirmative action to change the handbook to either take out this provision and also to put in a new provision that expressly allows the employees to carry under certain restrictions. And what those restrictions look like, I would have to think about it, and I'd be open to, if the committee wants to go in that direction, to hearing some ideas so that I can talk with HR and vet that from a legal perspective. You have to be careful too when you start doing psychological examinations. You have medical information and confidentiality stuff. And then also too, assuming that there was an incident that occurred in the future and we were sued, and I agree with Mr. Rather, people can sue for anything and it happens every day. It doesn't mean they have a good lawsuit or not. But one of the things that might be looked at if the county is named, if the county, we can't get out on at the early stage of litigation, is whether the restrictions that we put in place or the evaluation measures that the county did on the outset before we allowed the employee to carry the gun were reasonable and appropriate and proper, and whether we even implemented those correctly. So if we did that negligently, or if maybe we should have done something but we didn't, from that perspective one could say that we were negligent.
Commissioner Rather?
If we keep the handbook and restrict employees from carrying a handgun, I would at least say that we kind of clarify some things in this possession of unauthorized firearm or lethal weapons on county property. First of all, the county property is going to have to change because you can't restrict the gun being in the car and ammunition in parking lots owned by the county, so they would violate that just pulling in the parking lot. But yet you can't restrict that.
May I suggest something?
Sure.
If the committee doesn't want to otherwise alter the current handbook, but instead make sure it's clear that they can carry it in their car, you could put language to the effect of this. In accordance with TCA 3917-1313, employees who are the holder of a valid handgun carry permit recognized in Tennessee may, unless expressly prohibited by federal law, transport and store a firearm or firearm ammunition in their motor vehicle as defined in TCA 55-1103 while on or utilizing any public or private parking area if, and it lists a couple of the conditions
just add
in the
to it.
statute, that's right.
Yeah. And lethal weapons, a pair of scissors can be lethal. I mean, what's the definition of a lethal weapon?
Well,
Because
it's
in the
not-
Public Safety Committee, we specifically talked about handguns by licensed or permitted handgun carry holders. So now we're getting into other firearms, which my understanding is are already restricted. Like you can't walk in the building with an AR or a deer rifle unless you're going deer hunting inside the building. But, so that lethal weapons, that's up to, a lethal weapon to her is different to me, and Robert may have a different idea about a lethal weapon. What is a lethal weapon?
Weapon, I don't have the definition in front of me, but there is a definition in TCA under the gun laws that deals with weapon. Now, I know that what your example is scissors, so I guess I'm not sure how to respond to that. You could have,
Or we could put in there the weapons as defined by that statute, because it does specifically iron out which weapons are allowed and which are not.
that is, I think the extent to which you want to tinker with this, that's y'all's decision. Weapons also can be a battle axe, or a knife, a switchblade. And I don't think that, the county, I'll ask Sonny on this handbook, but that's probably something that you wouldn't want an employee to carry a switchblade to work when they're inside the county building performing their duties. So if the idea is just dealing with handguns, and to make sure it's expressly clear that you can carry them in your car, you might just tweak it in this way.
Yeah. I'll let Junkin work that out after, I don't know where we go with this.
Well, I think we can entertain motions if you want. I think as chairman that I believe we have a lot of questions. I believe this is a very serious subject, and I have questions, but you also, just like his question about what is a lethal weapon, we need to know these kind of things. Gentlemen, we can either move this on till next month and give this more study. I'll entertain, is there any motion to send it to the committee, or?
I would like to make the motion that we move this, bump it, and give the insurance or risk management department time to weigh in. And I would almost go so far as to ask the mayor or Steve to contact the other department heads and see what their thoughts are. I mean, this is just one. I'd really like to hear from other department heads. I mean, they're the ones that are going to have to work around it every day.
Yeah,
So
we can do that.
that's my motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
got a second. Mr. Urban, Commissioner Urban?
I was just going to say, next meeting, they should have more clarification on what's considered a deadly weapon, and stuff like that, so we can have clarification, so we can wrap it up, next month, if we could.
I'll add that to my motion.
Well, what I would ask for is that could you get back with us on the requirements that you have, any increase in policies, any of that? Commissioner Rather, if you have any departments you want to reach out to and make sure they have it before we come back to our next meeting, and we give them all the time they need. So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? All right. Put that to next week. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Nick. All right, let's move on. We're going to go back now to item number 5, which is the pilot program, which the school had brought up. And what this is the school was wanting on a tax abatement to get the money that would be going to them. So I've asked the IDB board and I've asked the school board to come. I want to ask Bill to come up first. Mr. Sullivan, if you want to come. Sure. I had given y'all a report, and I think all y'all have it. I see it on your, in front of you. The IDB board had a meeting, and I had went to it. And Bill, this, to me, and I might be, there's a lot smarter people at this table than me, but I had a hard time following it, so I'd appreciate it if you could go over it pretty thorough for us and kind of let us know what it is.
Well, with your permission, Chairman Harrison, copies I brought, I actually labeled columns in the row, so maybe there's 150 cells on here. I want to talk about 7.
Okay.
So maybe get us where we can make sure I'm explaining properly. We can say exactly where we are, so it might make it a little easier if you're
Absolutely, send it on.
If you're in agreement to
Send it
pass
on.
those around.
First thing, Bill, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, actually, explain what the school is asking you to do as well before you start.
My understanding is that the school board would like the IDB to consider not abating any portion of the county property tax that would be designated to education.
That's general purpose school fund and the education capital project fund, about 55% of the tax levy. That's what we're asking.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Just real, again, we'll try to be as briefly as possible here. Commission has authorized the Industrial Development Board to enter into agreements so long as they provide a minimum return of 3 to 1. In other words, for every dollar that we abate, that we collect at least $3 in other revenue, tax revenue. So if meeting that standard, then the commission, I don't know how many years ago, it would have been quite some time. 04, gave the IDB the authority to go ahead and enter into these agreements without bringing it back to the county commission. Should we want to approve something that comes in less than 3 to 1, we're obligated to bring it back to the full commission for them to make that decision. We would have a recommendation that they make that decision. We use a consulting firm named Younger and Associates to do that analysis for us on each project we are considering. So we asked Younger to go back and look at incentive deals that were approved in the last 2 years, 2018-19, and to do some analysis with specific attention paid to the taxes projected to be collected for education. In our report here, well, I think we missed the capital. We used the 50.6% instead of 55, but I think the mission of the answer will be very similar. So we had 5 deals that agreements that were approved that were part of this study. There were 3 or 4 others that frankly were parts of buildings and parts of expansion that in order to get this thing done in a reasonable amount of time, decided to exclude those because it would just take so much time and effort to bust all those apart, and I don't think it would make a lot of difference to the results. So in order to get something back to your committee, we decided to expedite it. and not try to break all those down. So,
So Bill, let's make sure this board is clear.
yeah.
You're saying that there was approximately 8 projects total in 2 years, but 3 of them were partial build-outs or something like that?
For example, a partial floor at the fountains
Yeah. Okay.
versus
So not a real-
all of that.
not a real
It
good-
just, we could have gotten the study done, we've taken more time.
So you picked 5 real projects that
Picked
were
five that
start
were-
to finish?
There were,
So what you're saying is you didn't cherry pick any?
no, we picked everyone that we could get done, and we've been asked to get back in 30 days, so we did everyone we could get done.
These are 5 legit start?
Yeah, but these are approved
cradle-to-grave
projects, and
yeah.
you'll see the names, some of them
Okay.
haven't started yet. These are the ones that the board approved. These 5 arrangements represent 917 new jobs, $279 million of capital expenditures, and jobs that on average pay 10% higher than the Rutherford County average wage base. So getting right to it, if you look at this chart and go on the top to column X, row 10, there's a red number there that's $2,187,964. Again, looking at just the 50.6%, that's the amount of taxes that would have gone to education that are being abated. In other words, that's what they are not collecting under these agreements. So that's the number we're kind of chasing. So we first wanted to know what that was. Secondly, we wanted to calculate, based on the properties as they sit before the pilot arrangements, what are they paying towards education now? If you'll look at column E, again, row 10, again, based on 50.6%, those 5 projects produce $7,167 a year in property taxes that are allocated to our education. And over the life of those pilot agreements, some of which are 5 years, some of which are 7 years, the total that would have been paid into education in the county would be $39,092. Okay, that's if nothing happened on any of these properties. They weren't developed. They just sit there as they said prior to the pilots. If you'll slide over to column O, and again row 10, in the middle of that blue section there, O10, you see a number $3,942,000 in change. That is the amount that the county would collect for education under the pilot agreements. And if you slide over one column, that $3,903,000, the $3,903,000 is how much more we would collect during the term of the pilots than the county would strictly for education if they sat there undeveloped. So we believe that we're collecting $3,900,000 more for education than if these properties were not developed. Again, we mentioned that we've been given the approval to agree to deals that give us at least a 3-to-1 return. On these agreements that you see here, the return is 6.88 to 1. Notice for every dollar we abate, we collect $6.88.
Where are we looking at that, Bill?
You don't see that number there. If you do the math all the way across, you would get to the fact that we abate $6 million in taxes all total and collect $41 million. The reason you can't see that because this just deals with the education portion. For the total projects, all taxes we would collect versus taxes we abate would be $6.88 for every dollar abated, or more than 2 times what our target is. Also, the average length of these pilot agreements for these 5 projects is 6.2 years. I think Chairman Harris was at our meeting, and I think the Younger Associates folks indicated that was significantly shorter duration than what they would tend to see across the state. So those, we're getting these properties back on the tax rolls quicker than they would normally expect to see. We also looked at okay, if we say we need to provide the same incentive in terms of dollars, how many years would we have to carry these pilot agreements out to provide the same incentive to the companies as we did before? Again, if you go all the way over to column AF10, the very last cell on the right, the bottom there, even if we extended these things 10 years, we would still be providing $1.6 million less in incentives than under the current arrangements. So if we needed to incent a certain dollar amount to get the deal, we would have to extend these things more than 10 years to provide the same dollars of incentives. Matter of fact, it runs out to between 13 and 14 years. We'd have to extend these deals out to make the same dollar incentive. The IDB strives to be competitive in these very competitive situations, but to do so with the least amount of taxes abated and for the shortest time period possible. That's our goal. I can't tell you if we didn't provide an incentive where the company would have come anywhere or not, just like somebody can't tell me they would have come without it. So you will never know that answer. But what we try to do is be as conservative as possible and get these deals as short as possible to get them back on the tax rolls.
So after average 6.2 years of the lifespan, then where you start collecting 100%
Yeah,
of the
that's
tax.
excellent question. If you look at column G10, once these projects go back on the tax roll fully, the education taxes collected are $830,000 a year. As they sit now, it's $7,000 a year. So that's why we believe that we would like to get them back on the tax rolls as quickly as possible. And quite often, these projects aren't completely off the tax rolls even from the beginning. I think in two of these deals, there's a year or two that they don't pay any property tax. The other three, they're paying some level of their property tax starting from year one, and it's usually significantly more than the property was paying previous to that. So I think, the bottom line, at least for this part of it, is we believe that these arrangements will produce almost $4 million more for education than if the properties were left undeveloped or not improved based on what we're doing in these arrangements here. It is true that we would abate $2 million, roughly $2.2 million of education taxes in that process. But we're going from collecting $39,000 to $3.9 million in a relatively short period of time, at which point we put them back on the tax rolls at $830,000 a year, just for education. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Bill. Two questions.
Yes, sir.
And one of them is going to be an assumption, which
I understand.
you know, Dad Young, that's a bad deal on my
got you.
part. So the blue column,
Yes, sir.
which is J through Q,
Yes, sir.
that represents right now how we're doing business.
That's based on that's what the agreements call for, that we've approved, that's what they call for. Yes.
What we're currently doing.
Yeah, on those 5 deals, yes, sir.
So here's my assumption. Column K, benefit cost ratio of original analysis.
Right.
We've talked about the Younger and Associates and the minimum 3-to-1 threshold
Yes,
for
sir.
return.
Yes, sir.
Is my assumption correct that do those numbers represent for Cintas, for example, is that a 9.8 return?
Yes.
And a 12.3 on Costco?
Correct.
Not a 3-to-1, but a 12.3 to 1?
Correct.
Okay, and a 5.26 to 1, 3.37. So really, your cardinal was the closest one to a minimum that we've had so far in 5 years.
Correct. Well,
Or the last 2 years, I mean.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so my next, great numbers. Let me ask this question. You mentioned right off the get-go that in 2004, this was started, and the way it was set up was if anything fell below a 3-to-1, you come back to full commission for for consideration or approval.
Approval, yes.
So I've been on the commission for 6. You're longer than me. McAdoo's older than dirt. Alan, let me ask you a question. Do you ever recall IDB coming back and asking for permission because the ratio was falling below 3.1?
Oh, I can't remember.
Okay.
As far as I recollect, they hadn't came back and asked for it.
Okay.
Commissioner Cush, just for my time,
Yeah.
which is not good, doesn't go back that long, I've had 2 situations where Mr. Latour, Mr. Bolden, and myself went to the county mayor, once when Mayor Burgess was mayor, and once with Mayor Ketchum, where we were, the chamber and Destination Road were working on deals that were probably so significant, they might well come in less than 3-to-1. In both situations, we went to the mayor's office and said, look, we're going down this path. We think it's significant enough that even if it came in less than 3-to-1,
Still a deal.
it might ought to be considered. Neither one of those came to fruition, so we've never been there.
Commissioner Cush, I was representing the board back when this resolution, 3-to-1 resolution was passed, and we have not come back ever to the commission with one.
All right.
Not to the commission. No, well, not. I don't know what you did in the mayor's. Sure.
No, but we're just our situation there was just saying, because if we couldn't, if there wasn't support, we weren't gonna keep spending the chamber's time working a deal that we weren't interested in.
Okay. So I guess a couple of things. First of all, I want to pat the school board on the back because they're doing their due diligence.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I'm on a committee that I'm trying to find monies for infrastructure improvement. And I have help with other commissioners trying to do that. You all get the joke. We're growing so fast, our infrastructure,
Can't keep up.
and I'm not talking about just roads, I'm talking about water, sewer, communication, everything.
Lots of stuff other than just schools as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can't keep up.
Right.
And we cannot continue to put that burden on the taxpayer. So the school board, like the rest of us, are trying to find other means.
Right.
So Doug, thank you again for trying to use your tools to find other ways. This was just another example of, hey, maybe this is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
So Doug did his due diligence, still doing his due diligence. So you see where we are and why we're going through this exercise. I'm happy to see these ratios as high as they are, because I've always been under the concern that 3-to-1, I didn't know what the ratios were. I always thought the 3-to-1 was a bad deal anyway. I thought you needed to really be around 6-to-1 for it to really work, but these are even far surpassed
Right.
the 6-to-1.
Right.
So more power to you,
Right.
to both of you, and Ambassador Latour back there. Because my first thought was, maybe we need to raise that 3-to-1 threshold to something a little higher before, and then you come back. But these numbers speak for themselves. I don't know that we have to even raise that.
And one thing, 3-to-1, if we were doing 15-year deals, if it took you 15 years to, but the fact that we're doing such short term, and the fact that
6.2
when we get them off, you're getting
You get 100%.
$830,000 a year,
Yeah.
assuming that taxes don't go up, property tax. So, I think the fact that I'm satisfied with 3-to-1 based on the relatively short term. Because you and our business people, if I said we could invest $1 and I'll give you 3 back
Yeah.
in 6 years, we'd probably take that deal.
Right. So a couple of things, just talking out loud.
Right.
This younger report.
Younger
Associates. Yeah, associates.
Yeah.
The associates probably doing all the work.
Yeah.
Because me personally, with the infrastructure background, when I look at these projects, does the younger report look at, okay, do they take a look at the infrastructure costs that it's going to be to get these customers from the interstate to the secondary road to the arterials to the project?
That is not part of
Is it? Okay.
the analysis they did for us.
And I know sometimes the developer will pay for some of those costs, but I'm concerned, much like we were a few years ago, when the school board would go out and buy property and build a school, and now the county's got to spend $14 million to build a road improvement
Right.
to get there.
Correct.
We weren't counting on that, you know? Ooh, we didn't think about that. We want to make sure, I'm just kind of giving you a heads up.
Yeah, yeah.
We want to make sure that you guys and Paul are thinking, okay, you got a Costco sitting
Right.
there, but we got to get people to it.
Right.
Okay, so somebody's got to pay for that infrastructure. It can't always be the county, because if it's the county, that means everybody in this room's getting a tax increase.
Maybe Costco specifically.
I just picked that because I
Okay.
drive by, it's about close to my
Okay,
house.
perfect. In addition to, outside of all this, because it will create a lot of traffic and stuff, the state has agreed.
Yeah, a lot of times, Commissioner,
Can you recognize yourself for
I'm
everybody?
sorry, Paul Latour with the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, sir.
And so a lot of times what happens is we'll leverage some of the state resources with TDOT in particular when you look at especially road infrastructure. We'll also use the Department of Economic and Community Development. If there's a sewer line that needs to be extended, they provide those infrastructure grants. So not all of it falls on the local taxpayer. I mean, ultimately it does, I think, statewide, but there are funds there, and I know when the mayor was senator, he's very supportive of those programs, and so there's going to be significant road and infrastructure put in by the state of Tennessee around the 99 area. So we're getting infrastructure that we're not coming out of the county budget.
Yeah.
Or the city,
Or city.
Or the city budget. So we're getting some, it's just outside of what the IDB does. But I mean, they're negotiating all that stuff outside of that. We're strictly dealing with the tax abatements. But again, 900 interchange improvements, roads, bridge, all that kind of stuff is part of it.
Right. And I'm going to say this also too from the school standpoint, and again, understanding where Doug and the school board's coming from. You mentioned, I forget the number, you said something about how many potential employees.
917. These represent 917 jobs.
New jobs.
New jobs, yes.
Okay. Well, in Doug's world, Doug Bodery's world, that is almost a new high school. 1,000 students would be a new school.
If they all,
Am I close? I don't want to speak off, but I'm close.
right,
So, new schools, $30, $40 million.
or 70.
Yeah. If it's vinyl siding, it's $30, $40 million.
Yeah.
So these are the things that is running through Doug's head.
Right.
Like, okay, well, why can't these 5 people
Right.
pay their share? And that's an arguable point. Because, okay, we've got 917 people coming and 1.5 kids per household. That's a school.
If they all moved here from out of county.
Right.
But some of them would be jobs here. Let me help you out just a little bit.
But you can understand,
Yeah,
you can understand where, what.
I can get to my final point really quick, because this is the last thing.
Okay.
Look at column or cell Q and 10.
Q10, okay. Almost $31 million.
Almost $31 million. That represents additional taxes that will be collected from these deals outside of what we collect for Rutherford County property tax. So that's another $31 million in the community. And just
And sales tax, things like
well,
that.
of that $31 million, 21.7 of it is local option sales tax, okay? So as you well know, half of that goes to education, and Rutherford County gets 85% of that half. The city of Murfreesboro gets the other 15%. So just the local option sales tax part of that, what it would provide to Doug, in addition to the $3.9 million, is another $9.2 million. So these projects, between collected property taxes, the education portion, and the county's portion of the local option sales tax, these 5 projects, these 917 jobs, produce $13.2 million in school funding. That's over $14,000 per job that's going to schools. I know there's been some discussion about could you do $1 per square foot on a new house? If all those 917 people moved here, which they wouldn't all, and if they all bought or built a 2,500 square foot house, that's 2,229,000 square feet at $1 a piece. You collect $2,229,000. If we miss just one of these deals, like Cintas, that could cost you, in money that's collected for the schools, $3 or $4 million. So I was aiming to try to find two. I may be collecting some, but I may lose one of these deals that cost me $3 or $4 million. So and again, Doug and Superintendent Spark are doing exactly what they need to be doing. My position is that, you've given us a task to do. You said if you do 3 to 1, we're good. We're doing significantly better than that. These 5 deals are collecting $13 million for schools. I think those jobs are paying their freight. And again, I don't know what else you could do that would generate $13 million for the schools. And I've had Mr. Bolden to check around discussion of Hamilton County, Washington County, and Williamson County. And none of those counties have passed any kind of resolution, as I understand Mr. Bolden certainly speak for himself, that mandates that their IDB not abate the school portion of the taxes. They will say, hey, look, we want you to collect all you can. We don't, but they don't mandate that so that the IDB has got the ability to negotiate the very best deal that it can. I think this proves that we're doing a good job in collecting you for the county. Because all this together, we're between all the cities, all the counties, all that stuff. We're on these 5 deals. We're abating $6 million of taxes and collecting 41 over a relatively short period of time. At which point they all go back fully on the tax roll.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in the 90s, this commission created the IDB board, and we set those expectations, and I think that they have far exceeded those expectations. Based on these numbers, I think this was a very good educational exercise. I thank you. We have a school board member here, Mr. Board Member Johnson. She's here. Thank you, and Doug and Mr. Spurlock for thinking outside the box, because it hasn't been that way in the past. At least you're looking, because you know the need to build classroom space. But I think we need to look elsewhere. There's some bills we were on the Hill today. There's several bills that are in the works. There might be some opportunities there for us. But I think we don't need to go any further with the IDB.
Yeah, and I can assure
they're doing
the
great.
school board and commission that, again, we look at every deal as hard as we can look at it. And what you don't see is deals we turn down, we pass on, or just don't meet our criteria.
You're just one of the rights we were looking for.
This is the ones that get through. And again, I think we can demonstrate that we're generating significant revenue in general, and significant revenue for the county schools as well.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman.
Doug, come forward, bud. You want to say anything?
Sure.
Absolutely, come on. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, appreciate it.
Well, I guess just discussion on this and what we discussed already at the IDB, and I appreciate the IDB and the Chamber of Commerce, they're doing a great job. Of course, you gentlemen know too, on the other side of it is, and of course you saw it at the IDB meeting, is when you do large or you bring large industries in, and we can argue so many people just commute, so many people do not come and build or buy a house or go to an apartment, but even on these cost benefit analysis that they do, they factor in on the benefit what's called an economic multiplier. And that means not only does this company come in, but it's going to bring support companies in. You bring a manufacturer, and it's going to bring in You know, it's going to increase car sales, it's going to increase sales to dry cleaner, grocery store. All those companies need employees. So naturally, it's going to bring more jobs, and they look at that on the benefit side. Then they touched on this, and this is out of a TASR report. None of this is my think so's. This comes straight from a report that TASR did, titled Property Tax Abatements and Payment in Lieu of Taxes Impact on Public Education. And one thing that they did point out that we touched on was it talked about how the cost benefit analysis are done with younger associates, and that's a really good company. I've worked with them before in other counties. But one of the shortcomings of the cost benefit analysis is and this states right out of the TASR report, it says the current cost benefit analysis required is very limited and is weighted towards the benefit side. Benefits considered include number of new jobs, total wages paid, the amount of state and local sales taxes generated, and any pilots, if any, that are made. The only cost included in the net is the net loss of property tax revenue to the county and city if applicable. And then it goes on as a recommendation. It says, at least for larger economic development projects, a community impact analysis should also be included in order to more fully calculate the full impact of the project. I think that's something that could be looked at in future deals here. The point being is we just opened Rockville High School, and the amount for that high school, the amended budget of that construction budget is $71,913,487. That's 100% going to be funded on local tax revenue, on that debt payment, just for the annual operation of that school, just salaries, benefits, HVAC, just basic supplies. That's $12.5 million a year. That cost benefit analysis does not take that cost into effect. And of course, that's the point that TASR's making, is that cost to the community, to everybody that's not on a tax abatement, be it residential or a business owner, including small businesses, that's a real cost that comes with growth, and that should be factored in when it comes to doing a cost benefit analysis. Of course, the IDB pointed this out. The big question is, okay, would the company come anyway if we did not abate the property tax for education, like Williamson and Hamilton does? And that's not new. That's not just Williamson and Hamilton. The TASR report, and I'll quote it, it's in numerous other states. They've come to this point as well on what you take away from education for the funding when you do abatements, and I'll read it. It says, some states have acted to limit the possible harmful effects of abatements on education funding. Kansas, Minnesota, and North Dakota give local school boards a formal role in abatement decisions. Colorado, Michigan, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Texas give school boards actual control over the abatements of the school portion of the property taxes. And then it goes on to say Florida law just flat out prohibits. And these are not just counties, this is entire states that are doing this. So once again, I understand, I'm sure the school board, we all understand that tax abatements, just like the IDB said, that is a part of the toolbox to bring in new companies. But then comes back the question, has it been posed to these new companies saying, are you okay with us not abating the educational portion of the property tax, which will not only go to educate future employees of you and the current children of this community, but also your employees' children?
Commissioner Urban?
Yeah, I think it's a big risk to take by not honoring it. Because if you lose one company, that could cost the county hundreds of millions of dollars in the long stretch. I think the abatement helps bring companies that would normally never think of Rutherford County or a smaller county, brings them in.
That's an argument.
It is.
I got
One statement I just want to make, you brought up these other states that they do abating, looking at tax abatement, but you didn't give me on these other states what they do with the local sales taxes. You know, like for an example, Illinois, they might not tax food or tax this or tax that. They may not even share local sales taxes. See, when you tell me about these little states, I'm only looking at one portion of what you're telling me. I guess if I could get a statement like the IDB gave me on the sales tax, local sales tax, how much is that going to education? I might have a better comparison to what we're doing here. Is there any way you can give me that?
I can point you to what the task report said with their findings.
And the task report is not referencing the local sales tax.
They looked at just the impact of tax abatements to Tennessee. You're correct. They looked at that. They mentioned these other states, but they focused on the impact of what these abatements have done with education funding here in the state.
Excluding no mention of local sales tax.
As far as the funding to the
Right.
school, no, sir, they didn't. I mean, they understand, TASER, when they did the report, they understood, that 50% of the local option has to go to, to education. They did understand that when they did this report and made their recommendations.
I guess what I'm saying, like the state of Tennessee, we get a portion of our local sales tax go regular school. We can't touch it. 85 counties, 15 in the city. So just take for example, the state of Kansas. Do they have a local sales tax where they give 85% to the schools and 100% to the schools of the local sales taxes? I guess what I'm saying, what other revenue is going into their school program?
That I don't know, but I do know with here in Rutherford County, of course, and gentlemen, you guys know this too, is, the state funding for education, it looks at a fiscal capacity index. Right. And as we grow and our tax base grows here in Rutherford County, they look at us with a higher index and say, okay, well, you have more of an ability to pay for education locally based on your local tax base, meaning you can raise taxes locally, so we get less funding of state portion of for education, and it shifts continually towards here than the county, on the county taxpayers. With the development tax being limited by the state, but it shifts onto other local funds, which I know Commissioner Kush has been looking at in his committee, and you gentlemen are limited. Wheel tax, property tax, sales tax is maxed out now. So there's, you don't have any bullets in your gun, and the reason I'm here tonight is because you asked me to go find another bullet. That's what I'm here for. But
Thank you.
But you make a good point, sir. I did not know that.
Thank you, Doug. Any more questions? I'm sorry, Commissioner Kush. Commissioner Reed?
Doug, I appreciate you bringing this here and bringing this to us, and I was quite interested in it and where it was going there. And I've had the thoughts, okay, if you did this, how would it be divided? How would it go this way? And things of this type. But then, as I sat down here with this right here and looked at this formula and seen the success of what I'm seeing, or where we will be going this way, I have to look at it on, I become skittish of messing with something that's working. I mean, I guess it's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if that's, that's not proper terminology, I guess is what we're looking at here. But I have to look at that and what we see. But, I just have questions and where we go and how we go and the old formula, the old saying of, if it's not broke, don't mess with it or whatever. But I've just been really surprised at the numbers that's been given to me here tonight and what I see. That's just what I'm saying.
Mr. Stevens?
I have a question. It looks like all five of these projects, the property tax is $12.1 million that would have been paid over the period of the abatement. And with the way that we're doing it now, it looks like 36% is being abated from the property taxes for a collection of $7.8 million. But if they just collected the school portion only from the property tax, it would be $6.13 million. So I'm trying to figure out, in my mind, how is 6.13 better than the 7.8 million?
And once again, it goes back to the abatement, that, it goes back to the point is, would they have come anyway without that? I mean, that scenario right there means they, it wasn't gonna come. I guess that's the big question. Hamilton County received, what, $8.2 million last year in payment in lieu of taxes for the education portion that they didn't abate of property tax for economic development deals. So would they, and Williamson County was around $1 million, so would they have come anyway? But once again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. But there'd be a good question is, in future deals, my thought would be, that's an investment, that education, that the tax for education is going for an investment in their children, their employees' children, the community's children, that's more than likely going to wind up hopefully being employees of theirs. We spend over $17 million a year in career technical education that these companies directly benefit, manufacturers directly benefit from. So, I mean, once again, I'm saying what ifs. I don't know. I can only point to these other counts.
And I guess the other thing to think about is if we had this farmland that turned into subdivisions or apartments, it's not going to pay as much tax as a business would too.
Yes, it's true. And there's a bill in the hopper up there right now that it's amends TCA, and once again, this is a bill, not a law, but it amends TCA to allow, I'll just read it, on some new types of, says, industrial development is introduced, creates an exception to the prohibition of an industrial development corporation purchasing a hotel, motel, or apartment building if the project is a tourism attraction involving an aggregate investment of public and private funds in excess of $75 million. So, you look at possibly abating for a apartment complex, residential. But that's something they're talking about up there at the state right now.
I think I want to do that.
Any more questions for Doug?
Doug, thank you for all your.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. And once again, I don't want anyone to construe that, I appreciate what the IDB and the Chamber of Commerce does. I mean, I think everybody does. It's just, you're just looking at all.
It's a team effort.
Exactly.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Keep it up.
All right, gentlemen, the question before this committee is, do we send this to Budget and Finance, the pilot program for the schools? Is there a motion to send it? Therefore, there's none. This matter, is there a motion to table this matter?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
no one wants to make a motion, it's just
It just
no
dies on the
direction.
line.
and it dies.
that's all I'm saying. I want to make sure I hit everything. Let's move on. Next thing on the agenda is the Infrastructure Committee report.
Brief report, legal and my committee are working with CTAS and MTAS to try and get direction on some possibilities of assessments. I'm also being told that the Budget Committee is perhaps going to be making a recommendation to Public Works about a wheel tax recommendation, but that's all I can tell you at this point in time. So our committee's continuing to meet, and we're again trying to move forward and leverage some, we're trying to continue discussion with our state representatives to ask for assistance.
And I want to add,
I'll have, we were in Nashville with Tennessee County Services Association meeting today and back tomorrow. I'll have some numbers. Charlie Curtis, former Representative Charlie Curtis, he's now the director, executive director of the Tennessee County Commissioners Association. He's gone in and formulated, he gave it to me today, this morning when we got there, but he's got some new numbers he's been able to formulate just for Rutherford County, showing what our sales tax revenue is from the internet sales. So those are about $3 million we're going to be seeing. I'll refine that, I'll get that to you.
The only thing I want to add is Public Works, which is tomorrow, we're going to be discussing.
Actually, it's not tomorrow.
I'm sorry, the 10th.
Yes.
So we're going to be discussing square footage,
Yes,
and that's something that
versus development.
that Mike has worked on, and it's something I suggest that you tune in. All right, thank you, Mike. Next thing on the agenda is committee qualifications. I'll be brief on this, gentlemen. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is that some of the committees that we have, I wanted to get a discussion and get advice from this committee on some of these committees that we have or asked for qualifications, a little bit more thorough qualifications to be on these boards. I will use me as an example. I am on the agriculture board, and I feel like there's no way, Pettis Reed should be on there. I am formally going to be stepping down when my term comes up and nominating Pettis Reed. So I just want y'all to know that. So I wanted to use myself as the main person on this. One of the ones I was looking at is Equalization Board. And we're going to have 5 applicants come up. And I understand, gentlemen, where, we don't have people, we seem to get one applicant and we jump on that. A lot of y'all here own companies. A lot of y'all are upper management. And with me owning a company and running it with the amount of people I have, sometimes I'd rather have an open spot than someone, that's not qualified or should be in there. So this is strictly Craig Harris's assertion on that, and I wanted to get discussion on some of these some of these committees and what you think on those. Going back to equalization, I felt like we should ask for some type of background in accounting, appraisal, development, and just give you an example of what I'm really talking about. So if y'all have any questions or anything, I would love to hear it.
Well, legally, can we put some kind of criteria on some of these boards and appointments?
I need to look at that, so it'd be helpful for this committee, or Mr. Harris, if there are other boards besides the Equalization Board, because I can just run a list, and I'll have to look at that. Each board is going to just depend on if it's within the county umbrella directly. Sometimes you have a board that is an extension of the county, but is part of maybe a separate nonprofit entity, and sometimes you have a board that is a mixture of both. Sometimes the TCA talks about it, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm happy to look at it if I can know what boards we're talking about. I think Equalization Board is one.
Nick, I've got a couple of years ago, I made a list, I don't remember what the committee asked me to do, but I have a list of all the boards, their terms, and the TC, what department they're in, and what the TCA code is that gave some requirements for that, and I can send you that if you want me to.
Sure.
I'll give you, for instance, the Public Building Authority, which I served on for many years. We just recently had several new appointments to that board, and there were some vacancies for some time, period of months. It would be nice if on a Public Building Authority, that some of the requirements that we set forth in that position would be a building background, a construction background, an architectural background, a background that was familiar with construction contracts. And I would preface that by saying those kind of backgrounds would be preferred, not necessarily mandatory, but preferred. And that may be the buzzword we use for any requirements for any position. Because if you have one slot open and you have multiple candidates, I think the one that has the most experience that's related to that committee should get the nod. And to me, the Public Building Authority is a perfect example of that. And while we're talking about Public Building Authority, I think those guys should be paid. Guys and ladies.
We looked at that in the state one.
You can't?
No, it's in the state code, you cannot.
Seriously? Well, that's horrible.
Well, gentlemen, if you look on this list of committees and names, there's a lot of spots coming up. I mean, just a lot of, and I wanted to bring this to your attention. I take, for instance, Commissioner Rather, I'll use him, Board of Zoning Appeals, BZA. I mean, we need to have someone with background in that. I mean, would you agree with that? No?
I personally don't agree. I would agree on certain boards, the IDB or Public Building Authority. There may be some things, and I agree with Commissioner Cush about these things are preferred. But since you brought the BZA, and I'm going to use Jared Barrett as an example. Jared, I don't talk about him because he's moved off to Kentucky now, but Jared was applying to everything he could apply to. And when I first applied, that comment was made to me, I don't worry about him, he applies to everything, applies for everything. Well, he ended up becoming an alternate on the BZA. Jared Barrett digs for a living. He's like in archaeology or something. He didn't have a lot of experience with our county ordinance and things like that. The smartest one person I've met in a long, long time. And he picked up real quick, and he did a great job in my opinion. And I think if you ask Chairman Cantrell and some other ones, they'd tell you the same thing. I know when we first started, when I first got elected, and we had some vacancies, this discussion came up about. I think I brought up a new application because the other one was kind of just name and address, and that was it. The comment was made, if someone is willing to serve and wants to serve, they're qualified. I remember that comment being made in this committee, and I agree with that. If they're willing, they want to serve now. Yes, I believe they should fill out an application, and on that application is, why do you, I believe we left that on there, why do you feel like you're qualified for this position? If somebody doesn't really qualify for that particular position, but they're running a pretty large company, or they're high up in their company, they're an executive, or they're in a position where you know that if they've got a degree of intelligence that would help that board, and they can pick it up pretty quick. So that's just kind of my thoughts.
Well, I'll remind you also something too, with this, my first time as a steering to vote on a committee, we had voted for two people to do, and I can't remember which one it is. I thought it was BZA, I could be wrong. No, zoning appeal. And we sent two people through to the county commission, and then Commissioner Phillips stood up and said the person wasn't qualified. And remember, we had a whole new nomination, and the person that we had nominated did not, get it. So I see where you're going with that, but I also see, where some of these committees, I think, and I like the word, Commissioner Cush, prefer. I think we need to look at that word. So my question, this was discussion only, my question to all you is if you have any boards on here or committees on here that you feel that we should have some type of qualifications, please get them to me, email them to me, and we'll discuss them the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I noticed today on that terrible word, Facebook, but the city of Smyrna has put out a way of trying to get people on committees down there, and they just mentioned the fact that we have a lot of committees where there are vacancies at times, and you might want to check our website just to see what committees are available. That we might be something you might be interested in, trying to get more people involved in the community there. This might be something we might want to do at some time, just when we do have vacancies or whatever, to get the word out there to maybe locate some people at different times. Let them know that.
Can we do that?
Open.
Yeah, we can post it, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we
We
should.
posted, I know, on our site, whatever, but this would be another avenue to post it out there.
Yeah.
But I just thought
Yeah,
that was a good idea.
I think that's a great
when they did
idea.
it.
I think it's a great idea. You know, the thing is, we got 325,000 people in this county, and if we base everything off the people that get involved in vote, 12 to 13, 15% of the people vote. You know, so it's not, you can see how low it is right there, but I mean, there's some good people out there. I mean, there really is. And our job as steering is try to put the best together on committees, then we have to look at that. So Mayor, check into that, and Sonia about doing that. Is there any more, Commissioner
I
Stevens?
was just going to echo what Commissioner Reed said about Smyrna. They also post on their TV station all the different committees that are available and the current members and when their terms expire, and maybe a little synopsis of what that committee does. So that might be something good to work with our TV channel, something different,
Good point.
and very educational.
I had already asked Ashley to start doing that, but during this discussion, I need to go back and ask her to do is start sharing with the other PEG channels in Smyrna, because people in Smyrna are living in Rutherford County, so they may want to serve, somebody in Laverne may want to serve. So, you know, as long as they're all working together, and even the city TV channel from the city of Murfreesboro, it's a great idea.
Good.
Thank you.
So you'll take on that, we
Yes,
can
sir.
ask you questions about that next
Yes, sir.
time.
Do you want information on eliminating committees?
What does that mean?
Getting
Do
rid of
away
some.
with the committee, if you want that?
I would say on the beer board, you may want to.
I almost got out of this, you know, that close, that close.
On the
Well,
board, you may want to put a caveat on there that they can't submit if you're in a background check and they have a DUI.
well, you know, last time, you know, Mike, you made a great point, we had an applicant.
It's about like 1989 or something.
Yeah, and I think we should put a 10-year or 5-year, some type of thing on there. You can't be on the beer board if you know, have a DUI in the last 5 or 10 years.
Well, we'll put a limit on there. I'm not saying you can be on there if you like to drink beer.
Is there any more discussion on this? All right, gentlemen, we'll move on.
You better get out of this way you can.
Before you on your iPad is a list of litigation. Does anybody have any question on this list? I have a question, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Amy Fowler, the very first one, has been on here forever. Can you tell us anything about it?
Mr. Hudson in my office has been handling that litigation, so he'd be able to report on the current status of it to you. If you want, I can figure that, and I'll email you, and if I can email everybody if you want, but I can at least let you know, Mr. Harris. I assume it's still in litigation. That one has many other defendants as well. I think that there were just a round of depositions taken, so they're still in the discovery process.
Okay. So it's been on here for it. I can remember.
It has.
Anybody else got any questions? Since there's none, we'll move on. Next thing on the agenda is litigation lawsuit settlements, and Commissioner Stevens brought this to my attention, and I would like him, Robert, if you'd like to talk about it, explain.
Well, sure. A few months ago at Budget Committee, I had a question about how much was being paid out for settlements and judgments, and we didn't have an answer at that time. And I started thinking more about how can we increase the commission's oversight and transparency with settlements and judgments and just litigation in general. I think this litigation list has been very helpful to give us information and know what's going on, because when I first got here, we didn't have that. And the number of cases is shrinking. A lot of big organizations like banks and so forth, they'll authorize their bank employees to make loans up to a certain amount, but after that, you've got to go to the board to get approval. And so what I was thinking was that if we have these lawsuits where settlements are going to be in the six figures, $100,000 or more, I think it would be a good thing if the commission has to approve accepting that settlement and spending the money. I think that'll increase our oversight and transparency, and if we're going to make a mistake, I'd rather err on the side of proper oversight and transparency instead of not doing anything. I think that'll help keep us all more engaged and more aware of what's going on, and we can answer questions for our taxpayers about where the big dollars are going. And that is a substantial amount of money, and I honestly couldn't tell you when the last time we paid out six figures on a lawsuit. And I just feel like we need to be aware of things like that, and there's certainly cons when you make any decision, but I just believe going forward that if there's a settlement that's going to be that size, that this commission probably ought to approve that.
Well, I have a couple questions. Number one is, how exactly, when you say $100,000, I get where you're going at on that. How does that work? Do we call a special executive meeting? Do we wait till the next 30 days or possible 40 days before, how would that work?
Well, if you end up in a mediation or working out a deal with a case to where you're going to settle it, you just have to make it contingent on the county commission approving the payout if it's $100,000 or more, and that would just have to come for us in an executive session at our next commission meeting.
Yeah. Nick, you want to comment on this? You got anything?
Yeah, so it's just whatever the commission wants to do. My office will oblige. So the system, the way it works now, it's from an attorney perspective, it seems to have been working. The settlements get vetted. It's not like, by the way, that we're settling cases left and right. It doesn't work like that. And you've seen the litigation list. It's maintained and it's shrunk a little bit, but it's not like the county's getting sued all the time. So it gets vetted at numerous levels. We have myself that is trying to negotiate a settlement, and I work with the county mayor's office pretty closely, and Mr. Elam from risk management. And then if there's other stakeholders, other constitutional officers that are involved in a particular lawsuit, I'll deal with them. And then we also have a third-party administrator. They're a separate independent company that is akin to a claims adjuster for an insurance company, because the county is self-insured up to a certain amount. And so those are the kind of channels that one goes through. Now, whether and to what extent the commission wants to have oversight, the county attorney in my office will do whatever the commission desires to do. If it is to come and seek approval, or if it's to keep it and leave it as is with working with the county mayor's office and Mr. Elam and our third-party administrator to be stewards of the settlement, we will do that as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Reed?
Okay. Nick, say, okay, you've got a $100,000 limit on you on a sale. And say we're in the situation of a lawsuit that's $300,000. And it's the 19th of the month. And you've been going through this and going through this, and you have this concern that, hey, it looks like it's gonna cost us $300,000. But then you get into, it looks like all of a sudden they come to you and say, hey, we're willing to settle for $200,000. And you could go through the process you normally do now, and we could settle for $200,000 instead of $300,000, but you've got to tell them, I've got to wait till 30 days to bring it up to the county commission. I could see where if I was somebody that I'd made this offer or whatever, I may not want to wait 30 days. And this could affect the situation. This could cost us money. I just, I know I've sat here at this table when we hired you and to be in this responsibility of what we do, and that's just where I'm at on that, and that's the way I see this. I understand what you're talking about and the cost there of going back to the budget and seeing how much they are, and maybe I just don't see the county commission getting into a crowd, a committee negotiating what the final outcome is out here. I have a problem with that.
Commissioner Leggett?
In the past, excuse me, in the past, my memory is what I think it is, we left it up to the mayor, county mayor. We had lawsuits in which negotiations were done, and the county attorney at the time and the county mayor made the decision. I don't know, in some of those, we give the county mayor the authorization to be our mouthpiece. We have in the past on some of our lawsuits. And then other lawsuits that I remember, the county mayor and the county attorney and all of the parties made a decision, and we found out about it after it was done. You know, that's the way we've done it in the past. But I can see your point. Now, if he's there got a client there and they willing to sell right now for this amount, and then you tell them, no, I got to wait 30 days and before I can get a decision, that may change their mind, because they may have something they want to do with this money the next day, and it may put us in a bad situation. We may come back and pay double because we had to wait. I guess I just don't like the fact that we got to rely on 21 commissioners, and you know how they can be. You know, 100,000 might be all right for me, but my next door commissioner, it might be 50,000. We could be going on and on and on with this thing and for some time. And then here's the legal department over here trying to negotiate with these people, and they saying, well, I don't know, we better just ask for $2 million. Look like it's gonna take a couple of years before I get in it, you know. So I guess I'm looking at the fact of getting 21 commissioners involved with their thinking in trying to settle some of these lawsuits. Could be an ugly picture.
Commissioner Rather?
I did have two things to say, and he took the first one just right out of my mouth. The second one is, when we, you know, I've been a commissioner a year and a half. When we settle a lawsuit, you've told us the route you go. Do we get something as commissioners that says we settled this lawsuit that they were suing for $300,000, we settled it for $200,000? I know it disappears off the list.
We have started to, not, you know, Mr. McCreary before me, I think, was doing it as well on the litigation list. So if a case resolved itself, there would be a notation to that effect. As best practices, and I equated this to if you're going through a divorce and you're coming to a settlement with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, and it turns out you got to pay a whole bunch of alimony, and you didn't think you did anything wrong, would you want somebody going and voicing that to the world? So from that perspective as the attorney, I always try to err on the side of not disclosing that. Now, we are a government, and transparency is a thing that we're obligated to do, and so there's the ability to do that. But to voluntarily offer it up, I would say from a legal perspective, it might not be best practice, because I wouldn't advise my other client to just offer up, we settled for this amount. So I don't put that in there. But if a county commissioner ever wanted to call me and ask, that'd be something I'd certainly, or the county mayor's office, because remember, guys, I'm still the attorney and I'm not the client. So you got the county as the client, and you have the county mayor and Mr. Elam and our third-party administrator who I work with, and it's not Nick Christensen settling the case. I'm giving advice on whether I think it's a good settlement or not based on the facts that we have and that we've investigated. And if we've got a strong case and we're not going to settle, we're going to move forward, or hey, we've got some bad facts here, we probably need to make a viable business decision to settle. Ultimate
Cost of litigation.
Cost of litigation, cost of defense, because contrary to popular belief that some attorneys' reputations get, I would rather not have the litigation and the income to me if it is a good business decision to settle because we have bad facts. I'm not in the business of just litigating to litigate and rack up attorney's fees. That's not something I want to do. But I also will advise them if we got some good facts and I've got an attorney on the other side that is kind of not budging and is thinking their case is a lot better than I think it is, I'll say, no, let's not settle. Or the county mayor or Mr. Elam or Greg Bankston will have their thoughts and insights because that's, in their positions, they have the ability to do that.
But you're talking with three.
Yes, on basically every piece of paper that comes out of my office, I let the mayor and Mr. Elam and Greg know about it. They're generally copied on everything. Heck, I think you all know it. And Ed frequently complains about a Friday dump that I oftentimes will just work all week and then just send them, because I want to keep them informed, and we also have an obligation to our excess carriers that are involved in this, because we're only self-insured up to a certain amount. And so there's an obligation to make sure they're apprised. By the way, they're hardly or rarely implicated in these lawsuits, because we don't have a large number of super substantial high lawsuits. It happens, and y'all have seen it over the years. It can happen, but.
Well, I've got a few other things to say. So out of the people that are looking at this, the attorney, the risk management department, third-party administrator, the mayor, not one of those is responsible for setting our tax rate. That falls on the county commissioners. And there's not one of those parties that's responsible for approving expenditures. That falls back on us. We're the ones that are ultimately responsible for the taxpayers. And I just can't see how wanting to be involved in a six-figure expenditure would be a bad thing. Some of these lawsuits drag out for months or years. I don't think a few extra weeks is gonna make a difference on there. I mean, if somebody wants to settle the case, you tell them, hey, we have to go in 2 weeks to the county commission meeting. If they want to settle it, I just can't see them running away and say, no, give it to me now, or we're not going to do this. I've never had an experience like that in my practice. And if we're going to err, I'd rather err on the side of transparency and oversight. We don't have a lot of lawsuits where the settlements are even over six figures. I mean, what, maybe a handful a year, if that?
So if we don't have a lot of that stuff, why would we go away from where we're at now? You just want more transparency? You just want more oversight over the mayor and the county attorney?
Just over the budget. We don't know moving forward when we're going to get sued or why we're going to get sued, but if we get sued for six figures worth of damages and various complaints, we need to be aware of that, and we need to approve and know where the money's going. And I think that would be a pretty common sense thing. I mean, this is just how a big business would operate. I don't think they're going to just turn everything over to somebody and let them take care of it for them without the board knowing what's going on.
You brought up a good point there, that that's the way they operate, the board know about it, and so on and so forth. Why can't the county commission just select one person or whatever to represent the county commission in these lawsuits? Because I look at private industry and whatever, they don't call up every supervisor and department manager and area manager and everything to be involved in the lawsuit. They get the information from them, they feed it to one person, that one person represent them. And why can't the commission do that? Why can't we just have one person to represent us if we want to show more, be more involved in the lawsuits? That's number one. Number two, it's a limitation, I think, of $350,000. Man, that number sticks in my head for some reason. And I think under the previous county mayor, a lot of the lawsuits was trying to be solved before they reached that figure. And why that figure sticks in my head, I think it kicks it over to the insurance or something or whatnot. So therefore, in the past, it was a policy of trying to keep all these lawsuits under that figure, so we wouldn't kick it to the insurance, so we wouldn't be looking at a bigger, larger insurance payment or insurance droppers or whatever, I don't know. But that sticks in my mind. Now, I can go with one person, but when you get 21 people, you know what you're saying? You're saying 21 people, you're going to bring it to them on TV or wherever, it's live, and we're going to discuss it. Adam McAdoo may like 50,000. Commissioner Reeves may like 10,000. And it can go on and on, not just for one commissioner meeting, it could go on for several commissioner meetings. So why can't we specify one person from the Board of Commissioners to be a representative?
Well, I'm not sure that we can legally do that. I've never heard of that or studied that before, but I can't remember any time in the 9 or 10 years that I've been here where we've had a dragged down fight about something that the attorneys brought to us in executive session. In fact, every time I can remember, when the attorney recommends we need to do X, Y, Z, the board has done it and not had
And
any
the board,
problems.
yeah, the board has done it, but they also gave the county mayor the authority to make a settlement on their behalf.
Up to a certain amount.
Yeah.
So we voted on it.
No, we didn't vote on it. We just, in the executive, well, I can't go too far in the executive session what we've done. But in other words, we just authorized the county mayor when we brought back in session to be our mouthpiece to go out and negotiate. But I myself personally cannot see us, 21 commissioners, trying to come up with a figure on a settlement of a lawsuit. I can't see it. I got one. I'm thinking about one lawsuit that's in my mind now that if that gets out there, we just might as well just class action suit and everything. We might as well give the deed to the county to them. And those are facts. Those are facts. You know, in these lawsuit presentation to the commission, you're gonna bring up information that possibly should have been confidential, but now it's out in the public. And so therefore, the person that's suing us saying, hey, they just telling it all. Well, they don't believe this. And it can get ugly quick. And I know one that's out there is ugly now, and if it get any uglier, you won't have to worry about the commission.
Any more discussion? Is there a motion on the table?
I'll make a motion that for any future litigation or settlements that come forward with a settlement of $100,000 or more, but the county commission has to approve that settlement.
Good. Is there a second?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What's magic about the 100,000?
It's just a number.
Okay. Can I ask, Nick, do most of our settlements fall under
Yes.
100?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Rutherford.
If a settlement, if we do this and it comes back to the commission for approval, I think I'm right in saying that will be done during an executive session, not an open commission meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But you'd have to come out of the executive session and then vote on it.
Okay.
But if
Because we're not deliberating in the executive session. I'm relaying to you what's going on in the case.
Question. If we're in a situation, Robert, if we're in a situation where we got to do something, I mean, you know, they want an answer, and we ask for an executive committee, I mean, that's going to cost the taxpayers $10,000 for us to go in there. Am I correct? I mean, if you ask for an executive committee, and we have to do something, I mean, we can't wait 30 days, we got to do something now. We got to pay, that's going to cost $10,000, and just paying us to be there.
You just make the settlement contingent on the commission approving at its next meeting. I mean, some of these things drag out for years. What's 3 more weeks?
Okay, but you can't tell us that situation would come up.
Well, it very well might. They might say we want an answer today or we're not going to settle, but I mean, how many times does that happen?
There's a motion on the floor.
Who seconded it? Did you second it?
Well, I would second it with the fact that part is giving me a headache. I want to be able to be fast on our feet. And Robert, I apologize. I think in some cases, you need the ability to act quickly. And for that reason, I can't second it.
All right. Is there a second? All right, motion fails. Move on to the next. The last thing, is there any other business? If there's none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Meeting is adjourned.